Hey, everyone. I never thought I'd be the one sharing my story on here, but after everything that's happened, I think it's time to let it all out. I'm a 33-year-old guy, and I've been married to my wife, let's call her Jessica, for 8 years. Things weren't always perfect between us, but I thought we had a solid marriage. I really tried to be the best husband I could be, and in the beginning, she seemed to be a loving partner, at least in her own way. To give you some background, I've spent most of my career doing janitorial work. It's not glamorous, but it's steady, and I've been with the same company for years. I've never had to worry about finding work, even though the pay isn't much. I've been trying to better myself, though, so I started taking night classes in hopes of switching careers. Jessica, on the other hand, is what you'd call a high flyer. She works in finance, and when we first got together, she was just finishing her MBA and scraping by while applying for internships. But once she got her foot in the door, she took off. She climbed the corporate ladder fast, and now she's killing it in her field. Expensive suits, fancy jewelry, a car that I could only dream of, she had it all. At first, I was really proud of her success. It didn't bother me that she made more money than I did. Honestly, I didn't even think it would be an issue. For a while it wasn't. I worked hard at my job and was doing what I could to get ahead, taking classes to build a better future. Jessica was supportive at first. She was the one who pushed me to go back to school. But then, a few months ago, everything started to change. She started acting differently, almost like she didn't respect me anymore. I remember the first time it really hit me. I had just gotten home from a rough shift, and I sat down to unwind by playing a quick game of Overwatch before heading off to class. Jessica came home, took one look at me, and snapped. She said something like, "It must be nice to waste your time like that while being such a failure." That stung, and it was so unlike her. I tried to explain that I'd just finished work and needed a minute to relax before heading out to school, but she wasn't having any of it. She called me lazy, and I ended up calling her cold. We went back and forth for a while, and it got pretty ugly. I had to leave for class, and when I got back, she acted like nothing had happened. No apology, no acknowledgement, nothing. At the time, I chalked it up to her being stressed from work. She's in a high-pressure job, and I figured she was just taking it out on me. I didn't want to be one of those guys who lets their partner walk all over them, but I also wanted to give her the benefit of the doubt. I thought maybe things would go back to normal. But they didn't. In fact, things only got worse. A month or so after that fight, it became clear that the problem wasn't just stress from work. Jessica's whole attitude toward me changed. She'd pick fights over the smallest things, like what I was wearing or how I spent my free time. It got to the point where we even argued about how I spoke to a waiter at a restaurant. And the worst part? It was like she was enjoying it. Every argument ended with her acting like nothing happened, and I started to get the feeling she was picking these fights on purpose. Then there were the comments. She dropped these nasty little remarks about how I didn't measure up. She'd talk about some guy at work, saying things like, "He really knows how to take care of his family," or "That's what a real man does." She always brought it up after I asked her about her day, which, of course, led to more fights. She seemed to love telling me how much she admired this coworker, let's call him Tyler, implying that I wasn't good enough. Let me just say this. I'm not lazy. I work hard, and I do my best to contribute to our household. I might not make as much as Jessica, but I carry my weight. Yet, it seemed like nothing I did was ever good enough for her anymore. These comments would spiral into full-blown arguments that lasted for hours. It wasn't just about what she said, it was the way she said it. It felt like she was trying to provoke me, to get some kind of reaction out of me. I remember thinking that maybe she was just bored. I'd read somewhere that some people thrive on chaos and drama because a peaceful relationship feels too dull. But it wasn't just boredom. It felt toxic. I thought about suggesting couples therapy, just to see if we could work things out. After all, we had a lot of good years together, and I didn't want to give up without trying to fix things. But before I could even suggest that, she took things to a new level. It started with these passive-aggressive comments about her needing someone who could keep up with her lifestyle or excite her. She'd say it loud enough for me to hear, especially when she was on the phone with a friend. When I confronted her about these statements, she'd gaslight me, telling me I was overreacting or completely misunderstanding what she meant. And honestly, she was good at it. So good that I started questioning myself, wondering if I really was the problem. It was around that time that I stopped feeling comfortable in my own home. I started to dread coming back from work, knowing I was walking into a fight or some kind of mind game. I wanted to fix things, but I couldn't shake the feeling that she wasn't just stressed or bored, she was trying to manipulate me. Then came the night that changed everything. Jessica had just come home from a work dinner, a little tipsy, and in a surprisingly good mood. I asked her how it went, and she smiled and said, "You know, I'm so jealous of the wives my coworkers have. They really know how to make a woman feel special." It hit me like a ton of bricks. I didn't say anything at the time, but it stayed with me. Something about the way she said it felt like a turning point, and not in a good way. The real unraveling happened not long after that dinner. One evening, Jessica was working on her laptop in the living room while I sat next to her, scrolling through my phone. She got up to grab something from the bedroom and left her laptop open, which was unusual. Normally, she was super cautious about her work stuff, always locking her screen. I didn't mean to snoop, but out of the corner of my eye, I saw the email she'd been typing. It was vague, flirty, but unmistakably inappropriate. The worst part? It was addressed to Tyler, the coworker she couldn't stop talking about. My heart sank. My mind raced through all the possible excuses she might come up with if I confronted her. I could already picture it, her gaslighting me, making me feel crazy for even thinking it was a big deal. So, I didn't say anything. I let it go and pretended I hadn't seen a thing. But it didn't stop there. A week later, she left her laptop open again. This time, the email was worse. She mentioned how bored she was at home and how work, and being around Tyler, was always exciting. He replied with a wink emoji. My blood boiled, but I still held back. Instead of confronting her, I took pictures of the screen with my phone. I wanted evidence, something solid in case this escalated. From then on, I kept my eyes open. It wasn't just Tyler. There were 2 other guys she was messaging, though they seemed to keep it more professional. Tyler, on the other hand, was all in on the flirting, and it made me sick. Worse, Jessica started leaving her laptop and phone unlocked more often. It felt like she wanted me to find these messages, like she was playing a sick game. I collected everything I could, screenshots of messages, dates, and times. I wasn't sure what I was going to do with it all, but I knew I needed to be ready for whatever came next. After weeks of collecting evidence, I was close to losing it. I could barely focus on my classes, and the stress was keeping me up at night. The final straw came when I saw a message from Tyler that read, "Last night was amazing. Miss you?" That night, Jessica had come home late, claiming she was needed at the office. I couldn't hold it in any longer. I stormed into the living room, phone in hand, and demanded to know if she was sleeping with him. She didn't even try to deny it. Instead, she just laughed like it was all some big joke. "What if I did? You don't have the guts to leave me," she said, her voice dripping with contempt. "You're nothing without me. I've carried you all this time." I stood there, stunned. She went on and on, tearing me apart with her words, telling me I was a failure and that I should be grateful for marrying someone like her. She called me weak, boring, and a joke. But as her words poured out, something in me shifted. All the love I thought I had for her disappeared in an instant. I realized I didn't care about her or her opinions anymore. I didn't care if she thought I was a loser. I was done playing her game. I told her to shut up. Then I let her know that I'd been collecting all of her messages, every flirty email, every inappropriate comment, every bit of evidence. I told her I was going to divorce her and ruin her career. Her face dropped. For the first time in weeks, she didn't have a snarky comeback. "You can't leave me," she said, panic creeping into her voice. But I was already done. I went upstairs, packed a bag, and left her standing in the doorway, speechless. I stayed at a friend's house that night, but I couldn't stop thinking about how to get back at her. The divorce was happening, no doubt about it, but that wasn't enough for me. She had humiliated me for months, played with my mind, and treated me like I was beneath her. I wanted her to feel the same kind of devastation she'd put me through. I had a lot of evidence, but the thing I knew would hit her hardest was her career. Jessica prided herself on her professional reputation. Her whole identity was wrapped up in being this high-powered businesswoman. So, I compiled everything I had, the emails, the messages, and some sensitive work documents she'd left unsecured, and sent it all to her company's HR department. I included her boss, her coworkers, even some clients. It wasn't long before the fallout began. A few hours after sending the email, Jessica was banging on my door, screaming that I had ruined her life. She looked completely unhinged, hair wild, makeup smeared, eyes red from crying. She'd always been so put together, and now she was a mess. I told her through the door that I was calling the police because she was violating the restraining order I'd filed. She didn't care. She kept pounding on the door, begging me to talk to her. When the cops showed up, they took her away. The divorce went smoothly after that. She tried to fight for alimony, but my lawyer made sure that didn't happen. With all the evidence of her infidelity and psychological abuse, she didn't stand a chance. By the time it was over, she was left with nothing. Her company fired her for violating their policies, and with the scandal I'd kicked up, no one in her industry would touch her. Last I heard, she was trying to start over in another city, but her reputation followed her. Meanwhile, I finished my night classes and started applying for new jobs. For the first time in a long while, I felt free. It was like a weight had been lifted off my chest. I had escaped the toxic grip she had on me, and I realized how much potential I actually had. I don't regret anything. I stood up for myself in the end, and that's something she never expected. Now, I'm focused on rebuilding my life on my own terms, without her dragging me down. I want to express my heartfelt gratitude to each and every one of you for watching my videos, sharing them, and supporting me along the way. Your views, comments, and likes are the driving force behind my passion to create captivating and unexpected stories. Every tale I share is more than just a plot. It's a journey of emotions, lessons, and reflections that we experience together. Your engagement brings life and soul to this channel. Thank you for sticking with me until the very end of each video, because the finale of every story is where the real impact lies. I promise to continue delivering twists and turns that surprise, inspire, and resonate with your hearts.